Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I could have Mrs. Van Coolen read our mission statement.
Marshall Schools develops the potential of each learner for success in a changing world.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Any changes or discussion on the agenda? Not, I'll call for the vote. That is approved. Our next item is our public forum. Is there anybody in the public that would like to address the board at this time? If not, our first presentation is Greater Minnesota presentation, and I'll turn this over to Mr. Lamprecht to introduce.
Thank you, Matt. We have a great group of folks here this evening to talk about Greater Minnesota and their services, and I just want to introduce our first presenter and coordinator of this activity this evening. That's Nicole Stoles, who is the School and Family Mental Health Coordinator for Greater Minnesota. So welcome, Nicole, and welcome to the rest of you. And we look forward to hearing all about the services from Greater Minnesota.
All right. Hi, I'm Nicole Stoltz, and I'm the School and Family Coordinator for Greater Minnesota Family Services. Some of you, if you've been around the 4 years we've been here, George Doobie, our CEO, kind of piloted getting this program going with Shannon Sinclair that used to work down in the Marshall area, and Tom Belcher. And as we've grown and gone into more districts, I used to work in the schools for about 10 years for Greater Minnesota. George kind of passed the baton to me to supervise all the school and family mental health workers that we have in Greater Minnesota Family Services. So I'm just going to kind of introduce the numbers, then I'm going to pass the baton to them so they can tell you what they do. So this is our 4th year in the Marshall School District, and as you can see, when we started in 2012, we serviced 80 kids, and we had 5 staff and 1 therapist at the time. And now, as we're in our 4th year, we've more than doubled that. We're servicing 178 kids. We've practically doubled family counseling. We've more than doubled TCM management. We're tripled the amount of groups we're doing. And we have 7 staff, but actually, as of November, there's an 8th staff being added here in the district, another practitioner. And she's going to kind of float and help cover some of the maternity leaves we have coming up. And then she'll eventually settle, because we have Melissa going between Parkside and the high school right now. So Melissa will probably pick one, and she'll end up as the second staff at the other school. So that's kind of, this sums it up. And then these guys are going to talk about what they do and what they coordinate with the social workers. And does anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Krista Biella, and I'm a school counselor at Marshall Middle School, and I'm going to talk a little bit about when we refer a student. So as social workers and counselors in the district, we identify students through teacher feedback, maybe observations we have, and when we identify a student that perhaps has some observable behaviors that cause concern, maybe we've met with the student, we've identified potentially some diagnosable mental health needs, we then will talk with that parent, and usually that's a either phone call or a face-to-face conversation, talking about what we've observed and what opportunities there could be by referring them to Greater Minnesota. And when the parent agrees, we get a signed release, and what that allows us to do is to then share that name with Greater Minnesota, along with the student's schedule, some of the things that we've observed or the concerns that we might have. Once we receive that signed release, we will complete the referral paperwork that provides a summary of concerns, noted tendencies or behaviors that we might see at school. We provide a class schedule. And the reason we do that is Greater Minnesota does a wonderful job of pulling students not from core classes. So we give them a schedule, and they're going to say, when do they have a non-core opportunity? So not reading, not math, Not always social studies or science. Sometimes students might have to be pulled from those classes, but most of the time they're going to pull them from the more exploratory enrichment times or advisory time in the day. And then they'll make parental contact to go ahead and start the diagnostic assessment. We also will work to introduce the student to Greater Minnesota to start building that relationship, because up until then the student probably has been working with one of us to try to work on some skills or maybe some coping mechanisms to get them through the day here at school. And so we'll make that introduction so that that start of that relationship goes well for the student. And then from there, Greater Minnesota starts the diagnostic process, and they're going to talk a little bit more about that.
Dolan with Greater Minnesota Family Services, and I currently am employed at the Maytech Alternative High School in town here. I've been there for 4 years, and usually after we get a referral from our school support staff, we start connecting with our students and families to start the diagnostic assessment process, where we invite the student and family to come into the school or meet with them in their home, whichever is a preference of the family and student. We look at the symptoms that have been observed and reported from the school, and also talk in depth with family about how long symptoms have been going on, what their struggles are maybe in the home environment, what their concerns are in school, and make a recommendation for a diagnosis. So they are receiving a medical diagnosis at that time for anxiety, depression, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So there is a way that we look at all the symptoms to find out which method of treatment is going to be best for that particular student and also their family system. We come up with goals, mutual goals between the client and the family system, and talk about ways that we might incorporate that in the home environment and then also in the school environment, since that's where we're primarily serving our clients. We try to come up with these goals that we meet a minimum of every 3 months to look at how are they going, are they improving, do we need to find different strategies to be able to work with the family, student, and school on, and work real closely with the teachers too to try to help bring them into some awareness and also support of what those students' needs are, and be able to see how we can look at the student as trying to help them with their success so that they can stay in school and have the support services that they need with conjunction with the family as well for those treatment plans. So again, those are kind of some starts about how we do that initial diagnostic, where we're looking at history and current kind of symptoms, and then looking at recommending a goal plan for at least a 3-month period of time to move together.
My name is Jenna Prusha. I'm actually in the Marshall Middle School for an office. I just wanted to highlight a couple of the real benefits of Greater Minnesota being in the schools. And a lot of this is kind of typed up, so I won't read it word for word. But the first one is consistency. Our agency provides services from 0 to 21, and actually some adult case management services as well. We have some newer, in the last couple of years, SEED programs and early childhood interventions that provide that mental health diagnosis and parent coaching and some of those skills as well to that young age. And we work really hard to have that consistency and congruency from early childhood into Parkside School, into each school level as they grow. And we also have that family-based specialized practitioners, as well as many of us school-based people go into the family. I would say that especially over school breaks, one of our highlights is that our services continue, especially over those longer breaks like Christmas, over some holiday breaks, and especially during the summertime. We found that these high-risk kids need some structure, and their mental health strongly hinges on that continuation of services. So I would say that during those summer or those long breaks, we get a lot more flexible. We're much more likely to be in the home and working with families. And again, that depends completely on the family and the kids' needs and their interest level. All of our services are voluntary, and so we definitely have to present it in a way that's beneficial for the family and that makes it worth their time. Because oftentimes families have to schedule around their work schedules to make it work to meet with us as well. In the last probably 2 or 3 years, we've also added our targeted case management services. This is kind of going above and beyond resourcing these clients to utilize some of the programs in the community, helping them access dental care, helping them access and have better communication among many professionals, especially in those families where there's a lot of doctors, maybe a lot of mental health professionals involved, and especially when there's school classrooms, counselors, and maybe an IEP involved. Having everyone on the same page is a real benefit, I think, and that's been something that we've been really bumping up in the last couple of years. We've also found that during the school year and during the summer, if we can connect and assist, whether it's with transportation or funding, kids with activities that help keep them active, and in structured activities, that's a real resiliency factor too. And when it comes to building skills, that's one of the big things that we look at. We want to build those resiliency factors that support those empowering experiences and just those skills in general. I did write up a little bit about the summer. Our services changed quite a bit. We're able to offer a lot more group activities during the summer, just because during the school year, the school day takes up such a big chunk of their time. But I think in every school setting, we are offering at least one group for kids during the school year and several during the summertime as well. I have just kind of a summary of some common themes of groups, common themes of skills for mental health counseling. Do you guys have any specific questions for us?
I guess I would have one. I'm just curious, is there an age or a grade level where there's more, or where you see more mental health problems, or is it pretty spread out? I mean, how young can you diagnose somebody?
We can start diagnosing at 0, and a lot of that mental health is maybe precipitated through parent functioning to an interaction with children. So we're starting to identify those symptoms where there's lack of attachment or bonding within the family system very early on. We find that if we can be very preventative and intervene early, we can be more successful with those resiliency factors that Jenna was talking about, and being able to connect families to other supports within our community too, to help just with that family success and interaction factor too. Elementary school, we do get quite a few referrals too. For some students, it's their first time experiencing socialization outside of their home or family system on a very frequent basis. So again, that's a primary target of being able to do some early intervention. But we do see mental health through the spectrum of any age population that we are servicing here in the Marshall School District.
It looks like biggest growth is happening at Parkside and the middle school. I think since the beginning, it looks like Parkside's up about 150% in clients, and middle school's up about 75%. So, you guys seen?
And why is that not uniform?
Well, just what are you seeing in regards to why that growth?
Well, and I think one kind of disclaimer that I put after that first page of stats is it very strongly depends on both the client needs and our staff availability. I will say that school to school, the referral process looks a little bit different as far as who feels comfortable making those referrals and how much of a process it is. And I would say in the last year or 2 years, we've added staff at both of those locations, so we've made it possible to be able to connect with that many more students.
There's a huge number of students that do have needs. Sometimes we do have a waiting list to be able to get services. And we found that through our 4 years of being here, families and community members are being much more receptive to these voluntary services, and having it accessible in our schools where parents don't have to miss work, provide transportation, risk their own employment stability is really becoming so positive for families to be willing to participate in services and be open to the idea of their child getting early intervention mental health services. There's quite a stigma about being able to get some support with mental health, and I think our Marshall community is really embracing that and welcoming that early on so that we can help kids be more stable for transitions to different schools as they age.
Is your 2015 data in here, is that for this year, or is that last year's school year?
It's for last year's school year through this summer.
Okay.
We started in the fall, and so we just kind of...
So this year's data isn't in here, 15, 16?
Right, as of August, so the last 2 months is not in here.
How's that?
It's very consistent. Yeah.
Growing?
Growing, yes. Yep. And like she said, Nicole said, we just added a staff. We feel very confident that we can have enough clients and enough referrals to keep that person busy when she's not covering some leaves. Yeah.
Do all of our teachers get trained to recognize things?
Yes, I think the Marshall Middle School staff have been very well connected with Greater Minnesota staff to be able to do presentations when there has been all staff days at school and are very consistently trained on what to look for symptomology as well. And our counselors and professionals are very well accessible on a daily basis, email or in person too, to ask specifics about are these behaviors something that I should be making a referral for or connecting with the family about these concerns.
And I think even though every school kind of handles referrals a little bit differently, I think at some point we involve the counselors before we make that initial family connection because they have just a very good understanding of kind of that whole experience at school and a little bit more information about family as well. I would say one of the benefits for us being in the schools and utilizing this grant is that I think it takes some of that mental health stigma away, the concerns about payments or high bills, and with transportation, that, you know, seeing a mental health professional in any other context, in any office outside of the school building, would be a significant barrier for most families that we see.
You guys see once they get to the high school, is that why the numbers are less there, that it becomes less of a issue, or, I mean, about the same number of students in the middle school and high school, but serve about half at the high school?
Right. I guess I feel like the need is consistent. The way that they're identified is a little bit different from the middle school into the high school. And I think that the other supports that they have in the high school maybe differ a little bit. Does that make sense?
And I think we only have, I think, 3 guidance counselors that are available and a part-time social worker at the high school, so their time is very much streamlined to helping with transition outside of high school or entry into high school. So they may not be able to access and kind of gauge overall student mental health simply because their focus is a little bit different in that particular school setting. They may see students that are referred for a teacher for crisis-oriented type services more than some of the other schools where they may be able to pick up on those early warning signs because they have smaller classroom populations, less students in the school, and form a different type of relationship with some of the students that they support too. But our referral rate is increasing at the high school. We have added a second part-time worker there too, and it's a school of 800. You know, it's got a lot of students with some unidentified needs as well. And you know, we'll be looking at in the future trying to incorporate more early intervention services throughout the school year too.
But across ages, it's the statistics are 1 in 3, 1 in 4. Will at some point, you know, have those diagnosable mental health symptoms, and across the ages, it looks different, but it's consistent.
Great questions. Thank you so much. I'm Jen High. I work right here at the middle school. I was going to say I live right here at the middle school. I think you're noticing that we have a great group of people, and I can't say enough about the professionals, excuse me, from Greater Minnesota. They are outstanding to work with. They approach every child with a good attitude. They get to their level. They have just a very professional stance and approach to our little kiddos. These are our most at-risk kids that Greater Minnesota works with, so that's our 3 to 5% on the tier for mental health. And these are the most intense diagnosed children. Jenna walked you through a DA, what we call a DA, diagnostic assessment. And so, as you learned from Krista and I, these are the anxiety disorders, the strong depressive disorders. That's stress and trauma related type of disorders. the neurodevelopmental disorders such as ADHD, the disruptive, impulsive, and conduct disorders, and other conditions like Jenna had mentioned, like parent and child, where they're just not getting along. The divorce disorders, or not disorders, but the divorce issues, and child abuse and neglect. We feel very strongly as a team in the district that this is a group of people that have strong collaboration with us. Here at the middle school, we have many benefits to having this group of people in our building, including they're right down the hall. And this Jenna and Lindsay in particular, with them being right down the hall, the children don't have any travel time. Their parent doesn't have to come up to the building, check them out, go back to another agency. We have kids right here, or we've got professionals right here in the building that can see our kids within a 45-minute, 50-minute to 60-minute session and go back to class. With that, our children are not missing more school. So they're not missing that 15 to 20-minute travel time. And in many situations with these kids, parents don't even have them return back to the school. So having the service right here in school is just wonderful. Jenna and Lindsay, Lindsay's not here, but Jenna, Lindsay, Krista, Lindsay Pells, our school nurse, and I, we meet bi-monthly, and we do case consultation on these little kiddos. It's invaluable. We are able to stay up to pace with what the kids need from the school standpoint and from that mental health standpoint. And not a session goes by where we don't really get the nuts and bolts of what's going on with that child. So we at the school can watch over them and see how they're doing on a day-to-day basis, whereas Jen and Lindsay will talk about their weekly meetings and how we can support those kids. Our Greater Minnesota people are very visible. You'll see them in the building, you'll see them in the Student Services office, the front office, or the administration office. And kids come up to them, they welcome them, they say hello to them. It's just a really nice interaction to see. Plus, when they're so visible, they're visible and accessible to our staff and to Kristen, myself. So being embedded in the school, the kids not only see the two therapists, but they also have the chance just to talk about their own academics with these therapists. And the therapist will ask them, how did such and such test go, or how did you do on this particular quiz? It's a real benefit. We work well together with this group of people, and the benefits are not to us, it's to our students, because we know that if the student is healthy in regards to their mental health, they're going to be strong learners, and that's what we're all here for. Do you have any additional questions?
How does the transition, kind of off of what Kurt said, so middle school kids, I think 66 count, transition to the high school, do those communicate with the high school then, and those students?
You want to talk about it from the school standpoint? I can talk about it from the standpoint.
Okay. I think that usually they transfer their information to the to the high school counselors as well, and just flag them. As far as our transfers, we work to really make it as smooth as possible and supportive for the kids. So there isn't a certain schedule that we follow as far as when we break off from one counselor to the next. We try to really utilize that summertime as a good transition time. And we, I would say for our Marshall team, we're very often very familiar with the cases already. Every month we're meeting as a Marshall team within Greater Minnesota twice a month to staff on our cases and staff what skills we're working on, what challenges we're facing, what's working, what's not. And so we're often very familiar with each other's cases and clients already to help that transition go smoothly.
Any more questions? Well, thank you, ladies. We appreciate the work you
And
do.
we always appreciate you guys listening to mental health and what our kids are going through. So thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. Thank you.
Our next presentation is a facility study recommendation. Mr. David Maroney is here from ATS&R. Your home away from home in Marshall. So.
I think one of the things that we can also do before David gets going is just we did invite any or all of the facilities study committee members to attend tonight's meeting if they wanted to, or it will be tonight here in about 4 or 5 minutes, this afternoon's meeting. And I know we have a few folks who are present, so Tiffany, if you'd start and just stand up. Everybody probably knows you, but just say who you are and what your role was.
I'm Tiffany Teske, and I'm the early childhood coordinator here for Marshall Public Schools. And I was lucky enough to be selected as the committee. It was a fabulous experience. We all left our roles at the door and really looked at what was best for Marshall.
I'm Russ Dano, and I'm the district accountant at the school, and I agree with Tiffany. When we walked in, I didn't really know what to expect. I had a good idea, but you know, just kind of how we started and how we progressed through it was fabulous, and it was pretty intense. I mean, it was an interesting process. So,
Charlie?
Yep. Charlie Ellers. I work out at U.S. Bank, and my wife Kari is a teacher here. And obviously I'm a father of 3, and same type of thing that's already been said. There's a lot of great things continuing to happen in Marshall. I know David and our group overall had fun just talking about a lot of different ideas on what it might look like going forward. So I appreciate being a part of it as well.
Thank you. Thanks for being here today, Dave.
My pleasure. Okay. It is a bit of a home away from home. It's been a lot of years. So, Scott indicated we've got about 3.5 hours.
Scott,
just kidding. I mean,
you can stay.
Honestly, yeah, I could be here alone, right? How do you summarize 4 months worth of work in a half an hour, 45 minutes? Well, we're going to try. So this is the agenda. We've got an aggressive agenda, which is normal, but basically we just wanted to kind of take you on a little journey of what the committee experienced, kind of the breadth of the evaluation, all the different, not all the different ideas, but just kind of a feeling for what it is that we explored and what our approach was. And some of the things that we had difficulty with but overcame and just kind of moved through the whole process together. And so that's really the meat of what I'm going to be sharing tonight. And then we're going to be talking about the development of the recommendation and the actual recommendation itself that the committee is ready to move forward with. This was the last worksheet that they worked on in meeting number 7, and then the next steps. So let's get started. Okay. First of all, thank you for giving a clear charge to the committee, because basically without a charge like this, the committee doesn't really know what to do. And what this enabled the committee to do is focus on very specific elements. School district is a very intense and kind of complex organization, if you will. And basically this really tasked the committee, kept us focused, that we are indeed doing long-term planning. We're creating input for you guys. We're looking at educational facilities, utilization, enrollment trends, developing the ideas together. So thank you for doing that. And it really, we put this up virtually every meeting, I believe, just to remind ourselves that this is indeed what we were there for. The committee itself was a very broad-based committee made up of all sorts of different individuals. The makeup of the committee it was about 40 people and just a wide range of people. We had a couple of students on the committee, which was awesome. And we also had some school board members on the committee, which was awesome. I mean, just having everybody involved was really the spirit of that group. And like Tiffany said, we we asked everyone to check their roles at the door. So the student literally had the same voice in a way as the business owner or the school board member. So we were all kind of working together. That was really the important thing. First thing that we got to do was with the group was get to know one another a little bit. We had some fun with that, but we also listened to what people's initial expectations are. You know, like Russ said, you come into the room and you're not quite sure what to expect. So we kind of listened. The first thing we did was listen to the group. You know, a lot of people, 6 people, wanted to learn more about what's going on. I mean, that was their expectation, to learn more. The people were concerned about high quality learning, the needs of the facilities, planning, you know, not just 5, but 10, maybe 15 years out. I mean, it was really a rich variety of expectations that people brought into the room. So right away, I kind of had a good feeling that this committee cared about the community and was really going to do, hopefully, the right thing for their community. Okay? So people wanted to come and listen. That was one of the expectations. Like I said, we had a 4-month-plus journey together. It was across 7 meetings. We had them roughly every 2 to 3 weeks, and kept the pace going pretty hard and heavy. I showed them one little rocket sled image of my son and I in this little trajectory, this, what was it, a slingshot, like at the fair. And some of the people, I think, felt it was a little bit like that at times. A lot of information, but that's fun. Process was really about gathering the information, which we did a lot of prior to the origin of the committee. But then we deliberated and we certainly concluded. So we moved across a span of 4 months, and here we are tonight. We had a clear-cut journey that we all knew going in, because we shared this with the group, that we were going to do these steps, these types of things. We were going to be looking at tax impacts. We were going to be looking at efficiencies. We were going to be looking at working together to formulate a recommendation. We were going to look at demographics, educational direction. So this was the journey that we laid out for everybody. We added a few things in between on occasion, like listening sessions at the schools right after meeting number 1. We also invited all the committee members to kind of get on the bus, so to speak, and get out and look at the facilities and walk the buildings and talk to the administrators. So we did that. So the listening session was really conducted by architects from my company, listening right to all of the people that are actually in each of the buildings. The bus tours were something that the committees were able to see firsthand. Process that kind of guides the whole thing is what we call GEMS analysis, and that's gathering the information, evaluating the information, modeling it, and now we're here sharing it. And that's the process. We want to find what really is good about your district and what really supports everything. Meeting number 1, we went into small group mode, and basically we created this, what we call a SWOT activity, which identified, and this is no information to the group now. We just kind of got to know each other. We got to know each other's names, kind of what our expectations were. Hello, how are you? We're all going to work together. Here's the rules that we're going to be a community. By the way, what are the important strengths of your school and your community? What are some of the weaknesses that you guys believe coming into this process? What are some opportunities and what are some threats? So it's what's called a SWOT activity. We had everybody in this room in small group mode. They were working hard. They were writing stuff down. They were creating what I like to say is things, the strengths we never want to leave behind, and the weaknesses we want to address. The other things are important as well, but those are a couple of very important things. So I wanted to hear what the committee thought before I shared anything with them. And these are the things that the committee came up with respect to that. So again, these were recorded and these were shared, and of course they're all on your website in the meeting minutes, and they've been there for months now. But basically these, and then we always had people, the groups prioritize them as a group and say, that community support is one of our main strengths in this community, which is awesome. I mean, to think that the people in that room really felt that and believed that. Quality educators, very strong points. A lot of support programs. Sounds like some of them were shared with you right before this presentation. And those are all very important things. We want to make sure that we never lose sight of those. But we also want to tackle the things like the large class sizes, the facility transitions, keeping and retaining great talented teachers, things like that. So that's just kind of organizing all that. Our listening sessions were very insightful as well. We went out and listened and organized things and, again, prioritized things. This happened to be a Maytech meeting that I was conducting. And the group kind of went through all these different things and pluses and minuses. You see a lot of that. What's really working on the left side? What are the challenges on the right side? And then what's the biggest challenge? What's the biggest great thing that's happening? So we recorded that. shared that to the committee as we came back together. And this was the tours, so they all got to get out and walk around and talk to the administrators and see what's really going on, kind of firsthand. Wanted to do this before we shared any kind of information with them as far as data, just to kind of get the context of your district. So then, that's all meeting number one. Now we're going into meeting number two. So really, we started to get into that data point here where we shared with them, well, what does the site look like? What are the characteristics of the site? How big is the building? How big is the site? How many students should be on that site? This is the utilization of every room in Parkside. We created and shared with them the capacity assessments based on your class size goals. We looked at some of the weaknesses, some of the challenges that were on that site, as well as the building, some of the things like the poor location of the main entry, lack of privacy for the nurse, things like that. Those are all real things that people are dealing with every day in the buildings. The basis of capacity was clearly stated. As far as kindergarten through grades 2 is based around 22 average students per class, and grades 3 and 4 it jumps up to 25. So that helped us create the capacities for the two buildings, West Side and Parkside. There is something going on in the buildings right now. It's called what I call an erosion of space. Because the class sizes are going up, there are no more needs for classrooms in both of those buildings. Essentially what's happening is the media center is getting displaced. That was step one. So that's kind of moved into a classroom size space. That 3 classroom space has become 3 classrooms. So things are just getting displaced. I call it the erosion of space. Staff lounges, they go right away too. And now you're teaching students in those spaces. So that's what's occurring in the buildings. At the secondary schools, we looked at the master schedules for the middle school and the high school, got very detailed, very complex structures of scheduling at those types of schools. This is a map that we shared with the committee that shows the free periods. In other words, if you see a 0, that means that room is scheduled 100% of the day. Like up in the science areas, virtually all the science rooms are scheduled 100% of the day. In other words, there's no space left, and the class sizes are up there. So where do you go? Okay, so this is the kind of information that we shared with them so that they can understand how every square foot of your buildings are used, how best we think they should be utilized. So like the elementaries, we created capacities for the secondary schools. A little bit more complex again, but it's based on how you teach your kids in this community, and then we bring in this kind of utilizations and efficiencies that we would see in a middle school or a high school setting as far as utilization of every room. We balance all that out, talk to them about it, and we land. So that's what creates the capacities for the secondary schools. Organized it this way, if you see red, that means that we've got some trouble already. So the Parkside is over capacity at this time. Of course, they're handling it because they have to. So what do? They converted the media center into 3 classrooms, flexible learning space. They're doing it. I mean, they've got no options. Same thing at the high school. That's basically this year has just jumped over capacity a little bit. There's kind of a sharp increase in students at the high school location. So now we've got the data points set. Okay, so meeting number 3 comes, and who do we invite in? Well, we start to look at the enrollment history, and Hazel Reinhardt, she's a demographer, state demographer, and very well known and respected in the upper Midwest, and she gave a presentation to the committee. So we brought the expert in so that they could ask any questions they needed to, go over everything. Her analysis is really 4 columns, and she takes all sorts of things into account, but the low K, low migration tends to be the smallest projection. This is looking out 5 years, then 10 years, so we're looking all the way out to 23, 24, 2006-25 compared to the starting point of 2200. That's the low, low. If you go all the way to the right, that's the high, high. One might suspect that's probably the biggest number. And so we work through the whole process with them, and then we go into group mode, and we let the group talk and communicate and say, hey, we believe that the path is really going to be the low, low, that's where we are, or the high, high. Well, this group tussled around with it, looked at it, and said that they believe that that's your community right there where the number 1 is, and that we should be studying things in context of that demographic path. Okay. It did coincidentally occur that this was done about a year ago, and the actual enrollment for last year was 2293, which is 20 more than her high projection. I've actually seen this demographer hit it right on the head a year out. She didn't this time, she was 20 short. So basically, that didn't hurt that assessment either. Okay, so basically the committee, once they decided that that's the path, that's what we weigh everything against. Okay, that's our crystal ball. And it isn't me saying it, it isn't Scott or Bruce saying it, it is the demographer saying it. Okay, so here's what's happening, district-wide. We look at that. The red is the capacities for all the buildings in the district. The green balls, those are your actual enrollments. Everything to the left of the blue is actual. Everything to the right of the blue is projections. This is district-wide. If you look at the high school, which Hazel Reinhardt focused on, because a lot of students come into your district at that point. Okay, so there's an actual kind of an increased amount of impact at that point with any growth. So we looked at the high school. We looked at all of them individually also, but looked at the high school here. And you can kind of see where we are right now with capacity, and as it crosses over in a year or so, it's heading that direction. Why is this shaded? Because demographers tend to look out 5 years with very good, solid confidence, and they tend to look out an additional 5 based on patterns and growth characteristics that may occur. She made one important point, and actually at meeting number 3, there was a representative from the city of Marshall here also, and Cal Brink, I think is what his school is. Somebody asked a question, what if we get more housing here? And she made it very clear that if more housing shows up in this community, those growth projections could be short, because hers are based on current patterns, which is consistently a lack of available housing. So if that housing catches up for whatever reason, that could add to the growth potential. So, what's the great point? Well, that's just in case we want to examine a 10-12 high school. You can almost see 10 years out, it almost hits the capacity of the current building, even with a 10-12. So that's just some of those points. Why does it go from a 900 to an 840? Well, in part because of the presentation right before me. These buildings are used differently than what I designed it for. I did design your high school, many years ago. But some of the characteristics of the spaces that we thought were going to be classrooms are now some special needs rooms. Things like that are starting to happen. Okay, so there's other impacts on this, and that can drive the capacity down. We saw some evidence of it here as well.
David, can you go back to that prior one?
Sure can.
When the high school was built and opened in 2005.
Yep.
We were actually over capacity at that time.
There we were, right? Yeah. I'm going to. I think you go ahead and say what your question is, because I've got a slide because the committee had a question.
Am I reading that right?
Yes.
We were over capacity when the high school opened.
We were about 970 students. That was in 02. And if you would, let me just show you this, because this was every meeting we asked, what kind of questions do you guys have as a committee? Are there things that we're missing that we need to fill in some gaps on? This was one of the questions. Why did we design the high school? Because, at that capacity, at that time.
Right.
Well, what I did was I went back to the review and comment that was prepared in 2002. And basically, there was your projection. You had a 5-year projection, and that was the projection for enrollment at your high school. So that's what we were doing, was we were designing to meet that. Okay, and where's the trend line going? Down, unfortunately.
Okay, so it was designed with the thought process to be a little over capacity to begin with, but student counts are going down.
Exactly.
So we'll get into capacity.
Exactly. And again, you know how every dollar is spent in a district. I mean, it's very important. And just to say, well, we should have built it bigger. Well, no. I mean, you just don't do that necessarily, especially with this type of insight. So, I needed to share this with the committee because it was a comment and a question. And thankfully, I was the guy standing here back then too. So I had this kind of understanding of this history. As we start to project this out, there's what's really happened. Now we're standing out here, and this, what's interesting is the actual path of this was, see, there it is. There's dead on again. Remember, that's a 5-year out projection, and actually the actual enrollment hit it dead on. to that point. But that was the extent of those enrollment projections at this time. Now your actual trend line is slightly increasing through this context, and even more sharply coming through here. So we're looking at 10 years this time. And I think your community is in a development mode, it appears. So I thought, well, because somebody else said, hey, you know, how short-sighted was that? So I thought, well, I'm going to dig up this thing that was actually published on the front page of the Independent after the meeting. What is it, April 21st, 2003. This thing made it onto the front page of the Independent. The photographer actually photographed it off the screen. And this is your high school, believe it or not, before anything. I mean, we were just planning it. We were just conceptualizing the relationships of the thing. See, that's the future. So we did set it up. Even though the future didn't look that good, it looked like we were going to be fine for, who knows, quite some time. Well, it could be, and it appears to be, the future's here. And this is what the plan was back in 2003. Was to complete an addition. So we did have a corridor built in this location that could tie into this and extend through there. Just trying to think ahead a little bit. Okay? So then we brought in another person that same meeting, Kara Rise. She's one of our associate partners with our company, and her specialty is interiors and learning characteristics, trends in learning. And went through a presentation. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights here, but how schools were constructed, as it moves through kind of more of a learning community or houses, and then the beyond thing, what's happening in the future. This we shared with the committee some of these ideas, that some of these learning spaces that we've created for certain professional groups that we're associated with. This was a classroom for 2025, very future thinking, forward thinking. Well, some of these principles are actually built in the Austin STEAM School that just opened up 2 years ago. So this is becoming now old news, the visions. And these are some other learning community ideas. Is it always a classroom? Not necessarily. Sometimes it's a way to get connected with larger, more flexible spaces, or smaller, more intimate settings, or even one-on-one learning. So there's a lot of different types of learning that's evolving. And a lot of it can support the variety of learners that we need to have it in the district. Just shared with them some of the other concepts and spaces. This is kind of an interesting thing. We turn a very traditional building into a whole different transformation of learning. And that's the same building at 6 classrooms. It's just used totally different ways. So we shared this. I like to think of it in terms of opening up the window and looking out the window instead of looking in the mirror all the time. So again, we kind of gave them some of that information. Safe and secure entrances. You've already done this at West Side, but it needs to occur at the other buildings also. So said the committee. Okay, so these are some of the principles that work into that. So, basically here's your district in very diagrammatic sense. These are the buildings you've got. Those are the capacities. The current enrollment is here. And we look at 5 years and 10 years. And if you see red, that's not good usually. So basically we gave them that, and then we asked them a huge question at the end of that meeting. Gave them a homework assignment. Come up with some ideas on how best to accommodate all this stuff we've been learning about into your facilities. Okay, never quite sure what you're going to get as a response. We had 40 great people in the room. But, the comment, they started coming in. And we created a pathway so they could get the comments to us. And people started creating their ideas. I was recording them. And they kept coming, and they kept coming, and they kept coming. And they just kept coming. It was like a faucet. It was so exciting, and it's so fun, because what happened was we ended up with basically 17 distinct ideas, and plus 6 variations of some of those. There are like 23 different things that we were juggling. So we've got the balls in the air. So this was my homework then, to respond to their homework, to come back and test every one of their ideas to fit, to make sure that the capacities were going to be dealt with, to make sure that there's efficiency, that you weren't just doubling the size of your district or whatever, keeping count of every classroom. So that was our process. That's what we did. So then we came back with them for meeting number 4, armed with all their ideas, all that stuff, and started looking at it in this context now. This is the same diagram, same information here, but now we're doing things like this particular idea had a big addition at Parkside, had a big addition at the middle school, had a middle school, kind of a grade 3-5 to 6-8 middle school, and it was going to be about 1,100 students in there in 10 years. So we looked at every idea in this type of context. We shared this with them as far as, okay, well, what does that addition kind of diagrammatically look like in Parkside to house all those early childhood rooms or the kindergarten rooms, or the impact on the site, or the impact on the middle school, and how does that connect, and where might that occur? Does that work? Is that enough separation between the younger students and the older students? So we had all that stuff for every one of those ideas, and we gave them this task. Basically, they each had worksheets with 3 to 4 ideas on. What we wanted to learn was what's working, or what's good about each of those ideas, and what's not so good. So they got to work. This was an amazing meeting. I mean, it was actually an amazing meeting. It was about 2.5 hours long, and this is what was going on. I mean, the group was just, I don't know, it was like one of the best meetings I've been at. And they were working, they were talking, they were organizing their thoughts, they were creating themes parallel with the ideas. In other words, what makes this really work as an idea? So we're creating some important themes, and we just kept going and kept working. And so they were creating these things. They ended up presenting them to the large group. That's how we worked. We worked in small group modes, so the 4 or 5 people could have a voice together, and then that spokesman for that group shared it out to the whole group, so then we all talked about it. You can see the themes on the left side of the room. You can see all their ideas and analysis of the ideas on the right side. So we worked through that. So then we started to do what we call thread the themes. We started understanding as a group, well, these were different groups and these were important things. So this started to emerge out as things that we really wanted to accomplish. What happened there was some of those ideas, we're going to meeting number 5 now, got reinforced in meeting number 5. They did some more deliberation. We actually sent out the community survey in that context too, that was built around that theme development that the group created. We tested it with the community, tested it with our own group too. Scott compiled all of the information and was able to get all this important information, and that started to create things like this. I'll tell you what, the top 5, those are supported by the community, by the survey, and the committee together. We better not fail on those points, because those are important. The next 5 are important also. There's others too, but you got to boil it down. And basically, this started to become one of the tests that we applied every idea back to make sure that we indeed were accomplishing things like building security or class size goals, financial efficiency, that type of thing. Okay, so each one got weighed against that right in the center, plus their comments, questions about each of these ideas. Got it all organized, studied it in depth, basically with some more detail, fit, dollars. I mean, when we say it's a certain amount of money, it isn't just a dollar amount. It's based on all sorts of different things going on. We literally understand that we're adding 33,000 square feet to the district, 18% additional square footage in your district. We taught the committee that one number makes a lot of difference too, because now Warren needs to operate that, or he needs to clean it, he needs to maintain it, all that kind of stuff. So we watched all those numbers, whether it's the amount of classrooms that this idea took to accomplish the goal, or the percentage of additional square footage in the district to accomplish the goal. So then we went into basically kind of what we call a temperature reading, and this was the night that we all put dots on certain things. So now we had about 17 different ideas out there. Detailed assessment of each one. We went through it all, and now we gave them 3 dots to spend however they wanted, and they got busy. And basically, 3 dots landed on 3 different ideas. It was kind of amazing, actually, that it focused that quickly like that. And we tested it back, challenged the group. Should we include some others? No, they were set on that. These were the 3 ideas. Here's the current structure. Here's idea 4A, 7, and 9. 23 people supported that, 19 here, 31 here. These are the differences in square footage. These are dollar amounts up here. So we started getting some basic information. And there's the actual square footage increases for each of these ideas. So we basically said, well, we're going to go back and assess that based on the tax impacts on, because these seem to be the 3 ideas that we're going to be eventually talking about tonight, okay? But now, again, this was back in August 10th. So my daughter wasn't even married yet. Okay. So meeting number 6 comes. So we got some more information because school started up, and then Scott said, well, we've got a new count for the amount of students in the district. Well, what is it? 2398. Oh, wow. Okay. Again, Hazel, what do you're 60 short now. So that was an interesting conversation with the group. Okay. Bruce presented the Ehlers analysis that was basically based on some certain points as far as amount of financing required, kind of a range of 30 to 45 million. What would be the tax impacts on an average value residence in your community? So we put that together with our 3 ideas, and that's what it looked like. We had 2 right around 40 million. We had 1 at 44 million. That's about $150 impact per year, and this is about 160, I believe, round numbers. Okay, based on that average home price. One of the ideas had continuing to use Westside as a focus, one of those 3 ideas. So, how was Westside intended to be used by the committee? It was an early childhood pre-K idea, kind of a center. So we can consolidate that in the district. That was important, and that's how we're going to continue to use Westside. So we put a layout together and kind of a designation of what rooms would be scheduled for that. I tested it against a new building program that would be about 24,000, which is interesting because Westside's 50,000, so a little extra space at Westside. But it could work until you start to accommodate maybe a possibility of all-day pre-K. We need more space. That has to be up on the 2nd floor. That sparked another curiosity that I had, and the group too, about the code implications. Can you put early childhood pre-K kids on the 2nd floor of a building? Here's the code. Yes, you can, as long as you got an improved automatic fire sprinkler system and a fire alarm. Well, you've got a fire alarm in that building. You don't have fire sprinklers, so we'd have to add that. Probably also would have to update and modernize the fire alarm system as well. So that started a whole other conversation. Well, what does need to occur? This is an independent study that the district had done previously to that building to get it up to speed. And what I like to equate this with any district that I work with is, what's it going to take to be able to use this building for the next 40, 50 years? We're not going to just do all these repairs and use it for 5 years. I mean, once you do something like this, it's your building. You're going to continue to use it in a very strong way for a long time. So what this is to get it kind of to that point where you should really be to take that kind of next step investment. And you see some of the things that are absolutely required in here. Some basic things, but I know it was prioritized, but I think replacing the roof is probably a very high priority. Before I spent a nickel on it, I'd make sure the roof was good. Okay, and the windows, those things are old windows and thermal, you name it. Anyway, so if I look at it in the same context of all the dollar amounts that we've been studying as part of this process, we projected out to a November 2016 bid date, which is a ways from now, but it's coming sooner. Project costs, so there's new equipment, there's fees, services, permit costs, a contingency. So this is like what I call a project cost. We would spend about $11.4 million on that building, and that's not any renovations to the new program for those little kids. It's really just to kind of get the loans to where it should be if you're going to really invest and continue to use that building for the long haul. So that was information that was brought forward. And then we tested it against our important top 5 and our second 5, and we found some gaps. And I must admit, as exciting as meeting number 4 was to be at, this wasn't as exciting. Okay, a little bit of a hollow end to it. It's like, well, what? You mean we got 2 expensive ideas and one that's less, and you're not even doing any learning. It's like, what is it? So we had a lot of gaps in it. And I think one of the committee members at that point, towards the end of the meeting, said, what do you think? Are there any other ideas that we had before that we should look at again? Or can you bring something else? Not that these were wrong, it's just that it just didn't satisfy kind of the breadth of what our focus was. So we went back, literally opened up the book again on all those ideas in context with these themes, and and tested every one of them again, and that's created the venue for meeting number 7. We found 2 that we had kind of set aside initially, 11 and 3. We did some modifications to it to reinforce the themes. We also pushed some of those back into these ideas too, to try to get an apples to apples comparison as far as dollar amounts. So these dollars tended to shift for that meeting, but these were right on here, and we brought this forward. So again, we had 3 ideas that either demoed West Side or closed it and sold it, or sold it, and then we had 2 ideas that reused it. Both of them unanimously were pre-K early childhoods. Okay, now it's starting to fire on what I call all cylinders, because we're testing it now, and now things are, all those 2 ideas actually do handle all those. There are some issues here, mainly that's the most expensive idea, and some of these didn't repurpose the pool or address West Side repurposing. That was the demolition. So this is what the balls look like now if you test it against the tax impact. So now we've got a little bit wider range. The difference between the low and the high is about $30 per year on that average value house again. But this gave us some more information. And I think at that point it became evident to a lot of people in the room, and that's when this was the start of this meeting now, where we gave everyone these copies, we broke them into their small groups, and we asked them to look at what 2 ideas do you believe would be most supportable and worthwhile bringing forward to you guys as a school board. And then start to draft a statement of recommendation with, that's the kind of stuff there is. So they got busy again. We gave them dots as usual. Green dot is a personal dot, a red dot is a table dot. Have your own individual thoughts, but yet where does your group, because it is about building a consensus around many different people, okay? And in this particular case, that table had their 4 dots on that idea, and they also re-emphasized it with a group dot. So that's all that means, okay? The red is kind of the group consensus. So the greens may have been deviant, so to speak, on other ideas, but in this case it was right on there. In fact, I think it's the one I just showed you here. So everybody did that. Each of the tables did that. And then we put them up on the wall, and this is what it looked like. Basically, the red dots congregated here. We got one over here, and we've got one down here. So what's interesting, well, these are all about, not really continuing to use West Side. And this one is really about continuing to use West Side. So we talked to them, and we talked to this group. What's unique about that makes it right for your group? We talked about it. We did the same with the Idea 7 group, and even the couple of personal ones on Idea 3A. Talked to each one of these, tried to discern what the unique quality was. In all cases, they moved towards that. Would that be true? And not by any magic or anything, but just by talking. And that was in a large group mode. So we're all there and we're all talking, and that's what happened. So they didn't land on 2 different ideas; they really landed on one. And it does address the top 5 themes for your community and for your committee. It also digs into the next 5. It is a good solution. What's nice about it is it's the least impactful as far as dollars. In other words, it's the cheapest. It's also the least impact on square footage. So efficiency and long-term operation, it's the most efficient. So it does look kind of like this. This is actually what it is. This Parkside turns into a pre-K 1 building, and all of the pre-K in the district would be consolidated here. That's the dollar amount that would be invested at that location. West Side, because it's going to be taken offline, non-school use, is a 0 impact. The new building that's being proposed to house your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders would be about $21 million. Marshall Middle School at about $4 million, with some conversion of the pool into a gymnasium space, remodeling that early childhood to get some of the hands-on learning back, some of the shop classes, the tech ed type of support that still exists there, And we'd like to use that and actually free up some space with some classrooms here so that the other hands-on learning spaces could be. Same thing's happening at the middle school. You know, what once was a fax lab is now a world language classroom, stuff like that. So we're trying to get some of that back in because it is important to your community. The high school, the addition plan there, also some tech area here, about $8.7 million. District-wide allocation for try to tie the technology together, about $500,000. We look at all the numbers on the bottom and it checks, check, check, check. All the capacities are good. It got the gold star for the night. And this is kind of what it looks like. So this is the site. And we also looked at the acreage for this amount of students on that site. And it's in check with the Department of Education guidelines, which is a certain plus. It's always good to be in check with that. And as far as things like play structures or additional parking for early childhood, we'd be creating a new early childhood entry at this location with their drop-off area and pickup area separated from all the other activity for the school. Building looks kind of like this. This wing would become an early childhood wing. Administrative support for that. New entry here. We'd get a secure entry here. We'd bring the kindergarten, which is all through the building right now, back to where it is, where it really wants to be. The middle school here, basically we've got some, converting the pool to the gym. We've got an addition that's not on here, but it would be. The secure entry area here, play structure for the 5th and 6th grade students. Again, we did some acreage checks here to make sure that if we put essentially a 600 student school on that site, what kind of acreage would that area need? And that checks out as far as the combined acreage for the site. So that's a plus also. The access to this, the building is located separated from the middle school, so it is a standalone building, has a separate parent drop-off area, teacher parking, and a separate bus loading area here, parking in and out, which could be gated, and then that would double as a hard surface play area. It sounds like there's a design, there isn't. It's a bubble on the plan right now. It's square footage, it's the right amount of square footage for that amount of students, and I've got a cost associated with it. The high school looks a little bit like this. That image that I showed you from 2003, we've modified that a little bit, and this is the first floor. We got the secure entry. We've got some cafeteria expansion, some classrooms, special ed room, a science lab, expanding some tech area here. This is the second floor. I think the appropriate addition would be a 2-story addition. And I like that instead of a 1-story addition because it also allows a continuation and a possible future growth pattern to still occur at that school. So again, you're not boxed in. Okay, so it's kind of taking one step, and frankly, it's more efficient to build a 2-story building. Stacking the science, stacking the utilities, any additional restrooms, that type of thing. So that's the idea for the high school. That's what it looks like on the site plan, the impacts on the site. I don't even really see anything from this outside there. This is, the handwritten version of it. Grade structure was important. Pre-K 1 at Parkside, 2-4 new building, 5-8 middle school, 9-12 high school. Some of the features, the cost, less than $40 million was the consensus on that. It could be 38, it could be 39, it could be 39.995. I don't know. It's less than 40. One of the groups said less than or equal to 40. But anyway, that's what you guys are going to have to finally talk about. Okay, but that's what the committee was talking about. Is that true? And the site, as far as locating where a new building would be, because sometimes, maybe it shouldn't be where everybody thinks it should be. So they talked about it, and they really believe that location on the middle school site at that location makes the most sense, as long as we still do a traffic study to see what the impact is on that, just to make sure it's correct. Wow. 4 months. I wish more of them were here because we could thank them again for all the time that they put in on this. I don't know, it was just really a commitment, and very exciting. So there are some next steps. Here we are tonight. We just reviewed the work of the committee. We can accept that recommendation tonight, but the next board meeting, I guess, is next week. We would need to get started on a review and comments so we can can start putting some of that stuff together for the Department of Ed to make sure that we're ahead of that. I just want to say thank you also for the opportunity to work with you guys and get engaged in such an awesome group. What are some of your questions?
Have you seen communities bring two recommendations forward? Just looking at the two, the one with Westside, still, refurbishing that. Have you seen? What are your thoughts? Plus, pros and cons of doing that.
Okay. Two steps. One would be if this group would have felt that that was important, they would have brought those two to you. Okay, as a board, they would have expected you then to make up the right decision. Which one of those? I'm not sure if you're discussing maybe potentially having that as a voter question.
Yeah, actually, in the long run.
Yeah, because as you can see, it's a very complex web, and keeping that available, then that changes a lot of other things. So I would say rarely.
Okay.
With that type of complexity, give and take, you can frequently see it with like your high school was done. It was an educationally adequate building, and then it was extended for some athletic space and Phi-Ed capability, mainly athletic space, and it was extended for the fine arts component, mainly the auditorium, and let the voters decide that. So, that type of a thing where you've got the right educational solution, because that's really ultimately the most important part of this decision. And that is what the community relies on us to come about. Now, if you want to extend that in one way, shape, or form, just so you know, some of the committee conversation was around, well, should we plan for all day, every day early childhood? It certainly is a demand. It's a good idea. It may even be an initiative that comes out one of these years from the state. They tried last year. It didn't go. But what if it does? Should we prepare for that up front? Or would that be a second question? Stuff like that. Those are logical. But that's a big one, and we really pushed the group. I think I pushed them pretty hard to consider that. And like you saw in the thing, one of the tables that night did talk about that, and they thought that it was just kind of a gut feeling they had that they should use it somehow because people would support it more if you did. I think that's basically what they were saying. And but at the end of the night, it wasn't the affordable right solution economically. It was more maintenance, more ongoing expenses, and we just couldn't figure out why. So, good question though. It's a big question. I kind of thought that maybe you might get two of those, but you didn't. That's why we asked for the two, which they can support those.
Sorry. Assuming we approve going forward with this recommendation tonight, what are our next steps? I know, financially, we've talked about how the impact on residential. We've not talked about commercial impact or ag impact to any degree.
I'm going to defer that to know that your representative or your counsel on that, so to speak. They've got the ability to provide you with all sorts of calculators and impact things based on a certain structure.
Yes, absolutely. And when we would come to the point where we would have a solid identifiable number, then we work it from there. And Ehlers would be out here to present to the school board, and as we would go through the process, they would continue to provide that information. And you're certainly right. Commercial and ag properties are, definitely going to have a whole lot more impact than a homesteaded property. So that will be a major consideration. And if we would have met on the 5th, a week ago, Ehlers was actually here on the 5th, but it just didn't work out. So they are keenly aware of needing to provide that financial information, tax impact. Also, what we would do is on our website provide a tax calculator so that no matter what your situation is, you'd be able to ascertain what your direct impact would be. So that would be another tool that we would have. And obviously, as we have information and listening sessions coming from the school district, the financial impact would be part of any of those programs as we move forward.
Would any of you guys that were on the committee like to add anything while you're here?
Well, I can say that, the financial impact was dealt with in that committee. I mean, I can say that last night was, we started at 5:30, we normally used to start at 6. And we were here, 3.5 hours trying to decide what we were going to do. And there was a lot of discussion about West Side and the gut reaction of what do we want to do with it, and it was a tough decision for us to do. But I think part of the matter got down to, if you're going to spend $11.4 million, what are you going to end up with? You're going to end up with an old building of $11.4 million, and we got no renovation on it. And by the time you add some renovation to that, you're building a new building. I know what there are community members out there going to say, we're going to dig up some old dirt, but like the discussion is, somebody says, well, you just build this school. People don't realize, part of the problem that we have, it's not a bad problem, is our custodians take really good care of our buildings. I mean, it's hard for people to believe that high school is 10 years old. And this building was built in 1968. And I was one of the first classes in this building in 1968. So our buildings are in good shape. I mean, they're well taken care of. So I think that's so as a committee of people, some of them that have been here from the get-go and some of them that have come into the community, really had this was a long process for us, and it wasn't an easy process by anybody's stretch of the imagination. We had some real discussions, especially on that last night, of what we were going to do and what we weren't going to do. It was a tough decision, but I think we had in mind, what I paid for a house, is $30 a month. I mean, that's nothing, but I ran an elevator for 12 years, and I know what farmers go through when they have to bid on, pay for this wants and needs in the community. And that was part of my decision thinking as well. We want to build a Taj Mahal? No, we don't. We want to build what we needed, and that's what we came up with. That's how we ended up with that 35. We kind of said, okay, this is what we need. We don't want to build a showcase for the whole world. We just want to provide an adequate space for our kids to go to school.
And the community has to know that with all that discussion, we want them to know and to support the ongoing growth of Marshall. And based off of what you just said, I think that's where that tough discussion came into play, because trying to be a good financial steward with the existing building and what's to come, that was the fun and the challenging process on where we ended up, in my opinion.
Everybody, we all came into the first meeting that we have grand ideas on what we'd love to see and happen, but every one of us had to compromise on, we'd love to have this, but this is what we are going to be able to put forth as this is what is needed. And we really went off of this is what is needed. And a lot of time was spent just having those discussions, and we brought, what do you think the community is going to think to the table all the time. In the meeting that this is as best as what we can come up with, and now it's time for the school board to decide.
And tell you that meeting we had with the demographer, I mean, Alice and I were 10 years in, she doesn't know what she's talking about, but the numbers are there. You look at the numbers we have, what she said was going to happen where we're at. It's crazy. I don't know how she gets to pull it done. She did. That's an eye-opener when you're talking that many students and process. And Cal was here that day, and he's got the pulse of the community and definitely the business community, and they like what they need in the next years to come. If they want to expand their businesses, but can't expand their businesses, then first people who come into town say, what do you got for education? I mean, that's one of our discussions about moving to Marshville, coming to work here. That was kind of a nice input from Cal to bring forth to us and say, there are businesses out there that want to expand Marshville, will expand Marshville.
Dave, what happens if the demographer's numbers continue to be low? If we continue to be 60 to 100 head over every year of what she's projected? We're still using her numbers, right?
We are using her numbers, and it isn't like we're overbuilding any of these ideas. Right. We're trying to keep that fit in check. And I guess what I'm going to offer on that is things that you're doing right now. At what point does it stop? I mean, when I set a capacity for a high school or middle school, I always set it at what a good operating efficiency is, utilization. And you got a couple of different things that you can do first. You can start to increase that utilization of every room, move from a 3.5 out of 4 period scheduling to a 3.75. In other words, have 3 of every 4 rooms used 100% of the day. But you can't go much further than that. I mean, I've studied enough master schedules, talked to enough master schedulers. You just don't do it. Every business person I talk to says, hey, run the thing at 110%. Well, it doesn't work that way. Kids don't come in those kinds of packages, interest levels and complexities of their needs to be able to do that at secondary schools. But I do offer that because we don't push it up really to the max to begin with. A little bit of room, not much, but a little bit just in case of that kind of thing. I would suggest over the next year, as this thing is evolving, that we continue to look at that, monitor that, to see if that's real or not. And perhaps maybe even bring Hazel back in and inquire, because it seems to be getting further apart. Now, these aren't official October 1 numbers, though, that were up there on the board. The first set was, but the next, we're going to, well, do you have them? It's October, isn't it?
Yeah, it's October, and the numbers are higher than what was up there.
So, okay. Well, there you go. I'd like to update my slide. That's a great question.
Well, the other option is possibly looking at class sizes.
Yes.
You got to start making some tough decisions.
Yeah, I mean that's your last resort is class size. That's the last resort. Yep.
Start doing a little bit what we're doing at work sites.
Yeah. Once you do it, though, then you're done. I mean, eventually you run out of that. Also, we did talk about that at the high school too. There's a couple of computer labs there that perhaps in the next 5 years will be freeing up for space, so that might give us a little extra at that media center to work into. But yeah, I mean, buildings are flexible to a point. They are still pretty rigid. Good question.
Any more questions? We'll have more time to discuss it.
You're welcome. Thanks again. Thank you.
Committee members that are here.
Good one, applause.
Our next item are committee updates or reports. Does anybody have any updates?
I just want to put a little plug in. Junior Achievement is looking for classroom volunteers to go into their classroom. If you are interested, I have the contact information.
We're putting that in the chamber, sending out that to the businesses, and I signed Cal up to do it. It'll be awesome.
Anything else? Discussion items for school board goals. Scott's going to briefly discuss this.
I will. You'll notice that later in the agenda, should you want to, there is an item that's an action item, 9.3, approval of 2015-16 school board goals. I have a process that I've kind of outlined that should you want to, as a board, work through and try to identify goals for the 2015-2016 school year, we can do that. After I put the process together, I started to think about kind of what's included in the process, things like our mission, vision, core values, our district goals. And keep in mind, these are school board goals and focus areas that we're talking about. And then I went back and I looked at what the ones were that you had chosen last year, those are included in the memorandum that Tricia has on the screen right now. Those were chosen based on some of the lower rated areas in the school board self-evaluation and also the evaluation that was evaluations that were submitted on the school board from relevant stakeholders. And if you look at the bulleted items, the two typically lowest ones or activities of the board were promoting the welfare of the district and children through the political process at the state, local, and national level, and taking leadership in securing teachers and staff support for the district's mission, vision, and goals, and the resources needed to achieve them. As I thought about the timing of a couple things, and obviously one of the big ones was David's presentation and what's been going on for the last 4 months, and I recognized how that fits into what is already in place, if you will. And also I think that you as a board took some nice strides last year relative to political advocacy by reaching out to the legislators during the session and the special session. We've had some folks who have attended various activities already, and I think Dion is interested in perhaps participating in the School Boards Association's delegate assembly. So one of the things that I would throw out there to you, I guess, and keep in mind, I do have a process if you want to work through it, would be to maybe just consider leaving the goals or focus areas from last year that you had in place and really, I think, continue because you haven't approved any new ones, if you will, letting me tweak them a little bit and trying to fit in some of the more updated information and perhaps bringing them back to you at the October 19th board meeting. I just throw that out there for a suggestion and maybe some discussion.
I think that's a great suggestion. Just looking at these two, I think these two are still very relevant. While we've made strides, I think it makes a lot of sense to maybe just tweak them a little bit and continue that focus. I mean, my thoughts.
Does that seem to be the consensus? If so, I will work on it and bring something back or have something for you a week from today and give you a chance to look at that and reflect on it a little bit and see where we go.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott. Next discussion item is the second reading of those policies. Any questions on those? First action item is approval of the Facility Study Committee recommendation. I'll make the motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I'll just throw out there, we did put together a recommendation memorandum that I hope sums up a lot of what David said tonight or this afternoon and tonight. Also utilized one of the slides from his or a couple of the slides from his presentation, kind of giving an overview of where we're at. Lots of work left to do, assuming that the recommendation is approved or accepted today, and certainly I think that will begin as soon as tomorrow morning, if that's the direction you wish to go. I know we only had 3 members of the Facilities Study Committee here tonight, but it really was some good discussion and some good debate and great perspectives and opinions. And I know I learned a lot, not just about our facilities, but really our district as well. So in advance of whatever you decide, I think personally I would like to, on behalf of all of you, thank the members of the Facilities Study Committee as well. And I'll try to answer any questions, or Bruce can, or David is still here.
I guess the concern is we haven't seen the tax impact yet, as far as breaking it down, like Karen said, to the ag and the commercial property.
And I would counter that, Matt, saying we did have that presented to us at the committee. It's just when we started lifting it up here and pulling things out, they kind of focused just on that average homeowner. Okay. But when we got the kind of projections, there were numbers that were put out there for different ranges of like a $30 million project, a 35, a 40, and a 45. So they were there.
You guys did see it.
We did see it, but I think they all need, for the average person to look at it and say, well, what is that impact on the average farm family? It's such a broad range that you could do it, but we did have some projections that were shared with us by Ellers when we were going through the.
And David had that slide in his presentation.
Yes.
Yeah.
It goes over all the residential, homestead, commercial, industrial, agricultural, homestead, agricultural.
You asked, I've got it with you.
I didn't really focus on it. It was.
Yeah, so I think just to clarify that, we did look at it, but I think when we lifted it up, the average home in the community marshal is what was focused on from a presentation standpoint.
Any other questions or discussions? If not, I'll call for the vote. And that is approved. Our next action item is the authorization to add an additional section of 8th grade. I need a motion.
So moved.
A second.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Again, we put together some information in memorandum form. This has been an ongoing discussion, really, I think, since the budget was being developed and as we brought forward a recommendation to you for the 2015-16 budget. And, we have paid attention as much as we can to the target limit for class sizes and when we've seen those have been exceeded, we've reached out to you as we did with 1st and 2nd grade. Now again with 8th grade, there are certain classes that are bulging at the seams. This is one of them, and in order to bring our average class size or section size in line with our guidelines or our targets, we felt we needed to bring this forward to you. The recommendation to add this additional section of 8th grade. Bruce, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that sums it up real well.
And we do have room here for another classroom.
Well,
we're going to have to be creative.
Yes. We're working on establishing that location. Have been. And the furnishings for it also.
Any time.
And the teacher.
Anytime we
Teacher's
add.
been found.
Are you guys done now?
Yeah, we're done. The floor is yours, Mr. Munson.
Yeah.
Anytime we add staff at any of our buildings or sections like this, over the years we've moved people all over, and now we're to the point of where we just have to be creative and we misplace, if you will, or displace someone so that we can create a classroom. But we make it work. Our administration and staff do a great job, and they make it work.
So these budgeted to for the additional teachers.
Yes.
Expense
Yeah, in the revised budget that's coming forward, all of this, including the bills, all of that has been budgeted. So.
Is there flexibility, at the elementary level, you can move them from first grade to kindergarten, depending on where the class sizes end up. Is there flexibility with the 8th grade teacher? Being 7th grade numbers are a little lower when they come up, for that 8th grade teacher to go to a 7th grade teaching the subject that they're...
If I understand, I think I do, Deanne. If I understand your question correctly, we certainly, as we get geared up for you're talking about next year, right? As we get geared up for 16, 17, we will certainly take a look at these types of things and if necessary, try to reallocate our sections depending on licensure and things like that to the best of our ability, yes. I think that's accurate, Bruce. I mean, I'm only 2 years into it, so I can't tell you that's from experience, but I think that's what we need to be doing.
It was my understanding we've just had a number of new families move in that we brought into the school district here in the last couple of weeks, and rumors or speculation or maybe fact that we've got another group coming around the start of the new year. Any idea what impact that's going to have? Are we know enough to plan for that as well?
I would say yes and no. We anticipate that there will be additional students enrolling in the district, like you said, sometime before the new year. It's hard to get a handle on exactly what grades they're in. We have some preliminary information, and I have not, and maybe Tricia or Bruce has, been able yet to take here's who we thought was going to show up for students in each grade, and here's what we have. I don't know if we've looked at that yet. Have we? From way back when, Bruce?
Way back when, or?
Yeah, from like 3-4 weeks ago, were we able to?
Oh, okay. Basically, that turned out pretty much what we had expected.
Okay. So maybe we do have an indication or some insight into what numbers we're going to be looking at in some of those grades. I didn't think that there was a cluster of double-digit students in any one grade looking at what we've been provided so far. I think we're looking at
pretty well spread so far. And there certainly is a very good chance that at the end of this month or by the beginning of next month, we will have additional students coming to our community.
So this 8th grade should start as soon as we can, or like this second semester?
As soon as we can.
As soon as we can get it started.
Yes.
Any more questions? I'll call for the vote. And that is approved. Approval of our school board goals, which we decided. Well, I'll make a motion first. I need a second.
You're going to wait till
Yeah, I think the best thing to do right now, Matt, is just to table those or just on to the next item.
I just pushed the next item. Thank you, boss.
Approval of the 4 field trips listed there. I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. Those are approved. Anything else? I have one question. Are we on track to get the portable classrooms? Is that all?
We are on track.
Done.
The goal is to have it go by Thanksgiving. We've made a selection with a company, Satellite Services, I believe is the name of the company. The actual portables will be coming out of Illinois. So it's probably, a great start if they're coming out of Illinois. And they need basically a 3-week lead time. And so we're working through TSP Architects, Ron Helgerson, who's putting the whole timeline together, and then requests for quotes for the electrical and for the footings and foundation that we need to do. We do not have to do sewer and water because of the how they're going to be used. We're not having a first grade classroom or a second grade classroom located in there. Basically have the pull-out programs located in the in these portables, and most of those are probably 20 minutes, 25, 30, or 45 minutes at the max. When you get over having students more than an hour at a time, that's when you need the water and sewer service. So I think everything's in line, and hopefully we'll have good results in regards to the request for quotes on the electrical and footings and foundation, and get that work started. Because we are already into fall pretty big time, and so we need to get this process moving along. So
Are those, is it a lease arrangement?
it'll be a lease arrangement on the portables, yes.
And is that through the company themselves, or are you?
It's through the company itself.
Okay, is that the only option you have, is to go through the company themselves, or can we go other avenues?
We could probably go other avenues, but considering what we're talking about, basically $20,000 to $25,000 a year, it's not a major deal as compared to like the technology leases that we've done. So I've decided that we just work through the company itself. We at least preliminarily have set up a 3-year lease agreement. Nothing has been signed yet, with some flexibility if we only need it for 2 years, that we work that through. There will be adjustments made, so there's flexibility with this program.
Anything else? If not, the meeting is adjourned.
Just wait.
Do we have to vote the table? Probably. Okay, so we're gonna go back to that item.
Darn technology.
Let's make a motion to table. Yeah, I'm sure it would have.